Why do autistic people feel like imposters in their own lives? And how do they overcome this negative and biased notions that they hold about themselves? Well, that is what we're going to answer. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aspergian Journal. One of the most common feelings that autistic people experience at various points in their lives is dealing with the notions of imposter syndrome. It can often be very detrimental of how an autistic person sees themselves as human beings, and it can also have an impact on the confidence that they have in their unique abilities and how they carry themselves in life towards the goals and dreams that they are hoping to achieve. This persistent fear can be very harmful of how one sees themselves, and it can affect their quality of life if it's allowed to fester and it's not challenged in any way, and where it can be allowed to exacerbate and affect that person's overall well-being. Which is why it's very important to overcome the feelings and thoughts and that are associated with imposter syndrome, and to carve out a path towards a more freer existence as an autistic person. What is imposter syndrome and how does it affect autistic people? Imposter syndrome is the persistent feeling and thoughts that anyone, autistic or non-autistic, can have surrounding their abilities, their personal identities or achievements that they've made in life, which can cause an unwavering state of dreadfulness and self-doubt for the person who experiences symptoms or notions of feeling like they are an imposter in their own lives. When experiencing signs of imposter syndrome, people often identify that they feel like frauds in their own lives who will eventually be exposed or found out for their inadequacies, or they're not measuring up to a particular standard and that of what they have stated to other people. Whilst imposter syndrome can affect anyone at any given time or stage of their life, it is very common amongst autistic people, and especially for those who were diagnosed later on in life, and those who have spent many years masking their autistic traits and their unique natures, which often then develops that vicious cycle of anxiety, dread, self-doubt, and it perpetuates further, and as a result it creates that anxious well-being, and that which can have a detrimental effect on someone's quality of life. To overcome imposter syndrome, it's very important to understand and tackle the anxiety and fear elements and that are associated with the condition, and also teach people how they evolve their mindsets towards a place of self-acceptance and peace, which can be a challenge for many people, and it's often a journey of adversity and the development of confidence that a lot of autistic people have to endure to get to a place of where they can be more self-accepting for their autism, and how it brings good things as well as bad things to their lives, and how do they work with what they've got towards getting to a place or a direction in life of where they want to be at. According to an article written in 2023 in the Psychology Today, it describes how imposter syndrome is first identified and researched in the late 1970s by two psychologists, which they established a series of patterns of where high-achieving individuals often show signs of self-doubt in relation to their individual unique abilities, and how it attributes to their successes that's based on luck rather than competence. They also state that up to 95% of autistic people suffer with imposter syndrome at various points in their lives, and highlighted that anxiety, masking, and socialisation difficulties play major factors and influences in their behaviours that they often display as a result of when suffering with imposter syndrome, and how do they cope with the anxieties and that is associated with it. Some of the most common signs of someone suffering with imposter syndrome can often include feeling like you've got to fake it until you make it, believing that success is made or generated on luck or deception, constantly comparing your life and journey to others, fears of feeling falsely found out for lacking certain abilities, or having a different judge of character, or discounting or playing down your own accomplishments. For autistic people, these thoughts and emotions associated with imposter syndrome often can extend beyond work or academic achievements, and can escalate into them questioning their autistic identities, which many feel like they're not autistic enough, or that they are somehow pretending to be someone that they're not. This was one of the main factors of my anxiety troubles when growing up as a child, where I continuously denied that I was autistic, and in the efforts of trying to fit in with my neurotypical peers and trying to be more like them. But all that really led to was me putting constant stress and pressure on myself, and feeling lost as a child, to the point where it did lead to me having a mental breakdown and having severe anxiety, to the point where I felt nearly housebound. And it was at that point where it started that long journey of recovery of my anxiety, where I had to basically reconstruct my mindset and my well-being towards one of abundance rather than scarcity. It wasn't an easy thing to do, but it was essential, and that for me to be able to free myself from the shackles of what the anxiety and imposter syndrome and that was doing to me and my life, and to be able to get to a place of self-acceptance, confidence, and having direction in my life, and of where I was wanting to go, and how I was going to set out to achieving the goals and dreams that I had at that moment in time, which is still carried me forward even to the present day. There are many factors that play into an autistic person's mind and emotions when showcasing signs of imposter syndrome. And these can vary from masking their autistic traits and behaviours. Now, this often involves suppressing their stimming habits and behaviours, which they use and that to be able to deal with their feelings of anxiety and adrenaline that maybe have in their body when they're dealing with situations or scenarios that feels uncomfortable for them. Forcing eye-to-eye contact, which is not really a strength for autistic people, because even though we maybe do have a little bit of eye-to-eye contact, but it often feels uncomfortable for us to do so, and we always, have to look away from people, even though we're still engaged in the conversation we're having with them. And that is something that I do, even to this day. When I talk to people, I can't look at them to their face, for an extended period of time. I have to look away, even because that's how I cope. But I'm still engaged and I'm with the conversation and listening to that other person. It can also be copying social behaviours or rehearsing conversations, either verbally or mentally, and to try and reassure themselves of what to say in certain scenarios, or making sure they're saying the right thing. And even though this can be in their efforts and that to try and be perfectionist and that in how they communicate with other people, but often and not, that just exacerbates the anxiety that they're already feeling and are associated with dealing with those uncertain situations. And obviously, it's reinforcing that anxious state and that the imposter syndrome and that relies on as that energy force to keep it reinforced in frightening that person and putting the fear of God into them. When realistically we should be removing those shackles and allow that person to engage with things mentally or verbally in the freest sense of possible. It can also be associated with those who have been late diagnosed later on in life, and they're just finding out they're autistic. Now, this often is associated with them having mixed and confusing range of emotions when they're trying to find validation for their diagnosis after spending so many years trying to tell themselves that they're just different or difficult or broken when they're not. It's just a different way of how you process information or how you see the world. One of the biggest myths that we have to overcome as autistic people in our own community is breaking down this myth that autistic people are broken, or we can't do the same things that neurotypical people can. That is false. Autistic people are just as capable as neurotypical people are when it comes to having a job, have a career, own their own house, have a family of their own, and be able to do normal things that everyone else in society can do. And it's very challenging when we have to confront those myths and have to prove people wrong. And that can be very frustrating. It just adds more stress and anxiety onto us. But we feel like we have to do that because that's the only way that we're going to get society to change their perceptions towards autistic people like myself. And that's why you get people like me and many others in the community trying to talk about self-acceptance more and engage in conversations of where of where we talk about autism in a more positive light, rather than society controlling the narrative of where autism is a negative thing when it's not. One of the other factors can be internalised ableism and perfectionism. This is where society often portrays autism through narrow and biased stereotypes, like this old myth that autism is only found in boys and it's only visible in its severe forms. However, as time has gone on and more research about autism has been found and documented, it's been proven that girls are just as likely to have autism as boys can. So if someone doesn't match these stereotypes, they often might think that they are not autistic enough. And this belief, and that then enforces that internalised ableism, where people unconsciously adopt to society's biases on disability, regardless if it's physical, psychological, or in a learning form, like autism, dyslexia, and many other traits and that you can find under the umbrella of neurodiversity. There can be many thoughts and that can enforce this internalised ableism, like, I have a job, so I can't be autistic. I can talk well, so I must be faking it. Or other people struggle with it more than I do. So that's like trying to incorporate yourself into a way that society wants you to be, when realistically you should be living your life based on your own conviction and your goals and dreams of where you want to go in life, and make your life the best that you can be. So many people that have come before us have spent most of their lives following what society thinks success is, and they get to and then they've lived that life, living to that expectation, only till they get to the point where they're on their deathbeds and they're thinking, God, I only wish I should have done more of this or more of that, and my life could have been more fulfilling. Like going on holidays or trying different hobbies and passions, rather than just constantly working all the time. It can often be that autistic people respond to social struggles by overcompensating on their efforts, even when it causes more stress and anxiety onto them. They may push themselves to perform in work and academic environments that often doesn't suit them. And so this is where this old analogy or conflict of where, some people are born with that academic mindset and they're able to do that kind of thing, or some people are more born to do with their hands. We're all not the same. And I think society has to be more accustomed to people having different learning styles and not push people into this perceived or this universal way of where everyone should have to do the same and live life in the way in society wants you to. When realistically, it's about incorporating your own passions and interests and that work for you, and to make it the best you can do. Imposter syndrome can also have an impact on the social difficulties and the need for validation from others. Autistic people often experience misunderstandings when dealing with social situations, and this can bring extra challenges of how they interact in environments with lots of people that they feel scared of or they're uncertain about. And these can often lead to developing lifelong feelings of being out of place or having the repeated outcomes of rejection, bullying, and criticism, and that which can often occur, which then feeds and reinforces their thoughts of self-doubt and the need for validation from other people, because they haven't built the courage and the strength within themselves to know who they are, accept it for what it is, and to live their life on their terms rather than asking the permission of others to be able to do things that they would like to do. They often may internalise the belief that their difficulties are like personal failures when they are not. And that can often fuel that anxious vicious cycle further, and the signs of imposter syndrome comes out in force and just perpetuates that cycle even further, which then just gets that person to repeat the same pattern over and over again. How can autistic people overcome imposter syndrome and build their own level of self-acceptance? There are many things that autistic people can do to overcome imposter syndrome and build better self-awareness for their autistic identity, but it requires effort, self-reflection, and fostering positive self-care routines and habits for them to be able to build that self-acceptance within themselves and build their lives that's based on their own terms. Number 1, develop the self-awareness skills needed to understand yourself better and to make positive changes. The first step to overcoming your behaviours and habits linked to imposter syndrome, it is very important to develop the self-awareness that you have imposter syndrome and how does it make you doubt about yourself and your abilities. This step alone can be a very difficult one to overcome, but it's not impossible to do. And once you do get to the point of being aware of your negative thoughts and feelings that's festering and perpetuating the imposter syndrome, the quicker you can take action to challenging this state of mind that you and body that you're in, and to challenge and overcome that for the better. Always remember that anyone can suffer with imposter syndrome, not just autistic people. And it mainly boils down to how you view yourself as a person and the perception that you hold about yourself that often feeds into the negativity and the destructive behaviours that can eat away at you if you allow it to fester and it goes unchallenged. Autism is not a single experience, and every autistic person is different. So by comparing yourself to others, you're only fueling the anxiety further and the associated thoughts and feelings that come with it. Like, am I autistic enough? Why aren't I like the people that I admire? And various other thoughts and notions that can enforce that imposter syndrome, and to allow that vicious cycle to attack you and that when you least expect it, or more badly and that than you'd want it to. As an autistic person, one of my biggest battles in life is when I try and compare my journey to other people, especially members of my own family. But quite often, all this does, it just adds extreme pressure on myself, and to try and behave in a way that goes against my nature and the things that I want out of life, because all I would be doing is trying to conform with what other people are doing, especially to those who maybe don't have your best interests at heart, or they don't necessarily they don't have much involvement going on in your life. For me, we don't have a close family, so we're quite often, you might have like distant cousins, aunties and uncles that have got their own thing going on, and fair enough, and like, and sometimes they're not, like, they're not the kind of people that you could rely on if you ever needed help, right? So it's like, so it's always like, so why would I want to compare myself to others when I should be just focusing on what I want? I mean, a good example like of this would be like my brother. He's quite gifted in certain things which might be different to what I'm gifted in. And like, he's had quite a good journey, a good career up to this point and everything, and he's doing well in life, and good on him. But then sometimes I look at the challenges that I've had to overcome as an autistic person, and I feel like, why am I not like him? Why am I not at the same stage in life as he is? But then I have to take a step back and think, well, hold on, he's not autistic like I am, and he hasn't had to go through the same experiences like I have. So you can't compare the two. I can only answer for my own life and the decisions that I've made up to the present day, and take responsibility for the consequences that come from those decisions. Number 2, keep a journal to help you reflect and change your negative thoughts and feelings. To overcome your imposter syndrome behaviours and habits is to identify and write down all the good, positive attributes that makes you the unique person you are in a journal, so it provides a visual perception of the great things that you've got in your life, and it helps with practicing more gratitude for the things that you have got and to where you have got to today. I know it can be a tough habit to start and build a routine around it, but anything good that is worth having does require discipline and determination to overcome the limiting and negative beliefs and thoughts that is holding you back, and to change them for something more positive and uplifting. By doing this, you get to see a visual record of all the good things that you have in your life, and what makes you the unique autistic person you are, and honour it well. Growing up as an autistic child, I struggled with self-confidence and having to hide my autism in front of others, or in my case, try and deny that I was autistic to try and fit in by acting and copying other people. All this did was just manifest that vicious cycle of anxiety and despair further, and that led to a very dark place in my mind, upon which I had to push myself quite hard with determination to overcome that harrowing experience and the years that I spent in that dark place, to get to where I am today of peace and self-acceptance. It was only when I discovered journaling and changing my thinking habits that I started to accept myself more and have a more less serious, laid-back approach to things, and to not let other people's opinions and perceptions weigh me down. Because that's one of the biggest things about imposter syndrome, is that when you when you attach so much effort and importance on the opinions and perceptions of other people that they have about you. Because then you look at that and you think that, oh, that there should be something wrong with me, you know. And all it does, it just adds to that self-doubt and negativeness, and that's keeping you low in life. And that when realistically you should be smashing that negativity with more positivity, and have the courage to stand up against people's opinions and perceptions of you, and not take it to heart. Know within yourself about who you are and what you bring to this world in terms of the unique gifts you have. Find those unique gifts and share them with others, because that is how we create a more self-accepting world and have a more greater opinion about ourselves, and not feel like we're like little hermits and that stays in the corner of the room, when realistically we should be in a place where we can uplift ourselves and other people around us. When I started journaling and writing my thoughts and emotions down, one of the biggest tasks that I did is that I wrote all the milestones and achievements that I've made over the course of my life up to the present day. You know, so milestones like surviving bullying at secondary school and going against the odds as a child, going to college and university to study business, passing my driving lesson for the first time at 25 years old, so I gained more independence, graduating from university in the splendour of a historical cathedral, and getting my first ever paid job in my initial chosen career, after many years of studying and overcoming so many adversities, and to get to the point of where I was more employable. Many of the strengths that I have, like strong pattern recognition, attention to detail, analytical thinking, deep focus for special interests, and being original, authentic in my nature, and being a kind and conscientious human being. Those are qualities and that I share with the world. And I hope that other people can look at this and listen and be able to find quite a bit of inspiration from that and be able to apply this in their own situations. Number 3, connect with others through shared interests and hobbies or social groups for autistic people. When combating imposter syndrome or any anxieties, it's very useful as a coping mechanism or as part of a recovery process to be connected or reconnect with your special hobbies and interests, as they can provide a source of enjoyment, a way of focusing the mind when in a high anxious state, and to identify a purpose or passion, and that which can lead to like future employment or even starting a business of your own. Special interests can change and evolve as autistic people get older or they develop more life experiences, whilst there can be special interests and that can stay with people lifelong. Socialising with like-minded people in support groups or participating in activities that you enjoy can be a massive support network, and that when it comes to overcoming whatever self-doubts and anxieties that you have that is making you feel like an imposter in your own life, and whilst also combating the associated loneliness that you can experience from time to time, and it can, manifest itself in many ways that an anxiety disorder and that is capable of. I know that developing friendships and that doesn't come easy to autistic people, which I know distinctively from my own personal experiences. But even we need close interactions with people that brings fulfilling conversations and connections into our lives that are based on shared values, principles and interests and that we can associate with. I know socialisation to a lot of people, their negativity or their difficulties around it is often shaped by their past experiences. But you can't allow that to stop you from thriving forward and overcoming any hurdles and anxieties that is associated with you wanting to become more sociable. I'm not saying that you have to be a true master of socialisation and be like the life and soul of the party. And because that, to a lot of autistic people, it would be their sensory overloading nightmare. I know it would be for me. Even though I do like mixing with people and I try and engage with other people to become more confident in my capabilities and be able to deal with uncertain situations more effectively, but sometimes I still prefer my own company and and be able to process my thoughts and feelings of the day on my own, and sometimes just having that relaxation or that solitary time on my own. And I know that's something that a lot of autistic people and that can associate with. One of the biggest hurdles when it comes to building friendships with others is the art of small talk. Now, I have talked about this in other videos and articles that I've written and as part of the Aspergian Journal about how people can, build their confidence in communicating and, and try and be more approachable to people. And it might be something I might cover, further, in the near future. But I think there's always going to be an element of that, and it's always going to be a struggle for autistic people. And I think it's about approaching the art of small talk on your own terms and not allow the anxiety and the fears and that can come with it stop you from developing as a person. Believe you me, if I just kept listening to my anxiety and my fears over the years, and it would have stopped me from progressing to the person that I've become today. And I would still be stuck in that really anxious, young human being that I was, 10 or even 20 years ago. Always remember that your past does not define you as a person, and you can change the trajectory of your life at any time, or any stage in your life, as long as you have the courage, the conviction, and the self-determination of wanting to change your circumstances and propel yourself forward and to wherever you want to be. And that can be different for everybody. No two autistic people are the same in terms of their desires, their likes, their dislikes, or what they want out of life, even though they might have similarities of how their autism affects them and what gifts and that their autism brings to the world. Number 4, consider seeking therapy support if you need help with combating your limiting beliefs and habits in efforts to build self-compassion. Once you have built the self-awareness for your thoughts and feelings that are fueling the behaviours and the habits of imposter syndrome, you need to take action to overcome these thoughts and feelings by challenging their nature, the meaning behind them, and challenging the negative connotations and that you have got and about yourself, and transform them into something that is more positive and uplifting. It lifts your spirit and your happiness about who you are as a person, showing gratitude and that for where you are in your life, despite whatever challenges and adversities that you are experiencing at any given moment, and have the vision of what you want to achieve out of life, and take and create those proactive, actionable steps and that you can take towards that. By breaking the vicious, anxious cycle that is attached to those thoughts and feelings and relating to imposter syndrome, you can start to build the confidence within yourself of tackling any obstacles in life head on and force that habit of self-compassion. I cannot stress enough about how developing those self-compassionate exercises and that can do to uplift your mood and to help you change those limiting beliefs and thoughts that you have in your mind about yourself that is holding you back. And by challenging them and creating something that's more positive and uplifting, and that you start to change your anxiety response and that to the thoughts and that is associated with imposter syndrome. You know, you got to treat the recovery process in the same way that you would with anxiety. You know, the more you face something head on, the thing that you fear the most, but do not act in terms of doing the compulsion to give you that short-term relief from that anxiety, and you stay in those situations or stay with those thoughts and that it's causing anxiety and not react to them and stay neutral. And that is a habit and that takes a lot of effort and practice to build. And that the anxiety starts to loosen its control, its grip on you. And over time, you start to, you don't get the same anxious response as you did at the start of your recovery process. The reason for this is that they're looking for validation of what their anxious minds are telling them, instead of looking at themselves in the mirror and see that the only validation they need is their own and not from external sources. In essence, imposter syndrome behaves in the same way obsessive compulsive disorder does. Get the patient to have an intrusive, irrational fear and then complete an act or instruction to relieve them from the associated anxiety. When you seek external validation to feel better about yourself, you're really feeding into that OCD tendencies, and it triggers the anxiety-driven behaviours and that which keeps you trapped in that vicious cycle, and as a result it derails you of the courage and the ability that you need to recover from those anxious states, and it tries to diminish your ability to deal with uncertainty. Uncertainty is something that a lot of autistic people struggle with, myself included. But it's just a factor of life that you have to learn to embrace and manage and act to the best of our abilities. I will not lie to you. I still get moments, even to this day, of where uncertainty gets the better of me. And sometimes I just have to remind myself, and I'll look at the progress that I've made. How have I tackled obstacles in the past? And have the confidence within myself, or the courage, so I say, in myself, and to know that I can manage these situations better, and I will not allow it to build up my anxiety so much, and that it's detrimental to my well-being. The truth is that your experiences, challenges, and strengths are real, valid, and genuine, and you are not an imposter by no shape or form. You are someone who has navigated a world that often fails to recognise your differences, and you still found ways to adapt, learn, and grow as the unique person that you are. And as a community, we should be supporting and celebrating each other in our efforts and of becoming stronger, more confident, and vibrant human beings that I know that we are all capable of. And be proud of the progress that we individually make, and how our stories coming together builds a supportive and a collaborative autistic community, and that can thrive and strive and for a better future. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more autistic content, please do consider subscribing to the Aspergian Journal on YouTube and Substack, so you can be kept in the loop for when new content is released. As always, thank you.